Okay, here we go again. So I just tried to do this stream and it didn't work. I didn't have audio. So the stream worked. I was surprised. I was actually able to get this to stream correctly, but the audio was blank. So I fixed the audio. I believe I can do both system audio and microphone. And so today is January 14th, 2020. Happy New Year. Aloha. Um, we are doing this series, Hawaii Divided. And this is the third episode about the European arrival. So we've done two other episodes. The first was the uh, first Hawaiians, which is the Mu people, the people from Taiwan. And then we talked about the wars in Hawaii, the conflicts in Hawaii before the Europeans arrived, which included when the Tahitians conquered the Mu and created a caste system and the kapu and other things. And the Kuva, the Kauwa. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then this one is about the European arrival. So there's been a lot of things that people have told me that, for example, the English or the Europeans forbid the Hawaiian language during the first 50 years or so of the Hawaiian kingdom, that people couldn't speak Hawaiian. We know that's not true because look at all the street names, look at all the newspapers, look at all the books throughout the last 150 years or whatever that were written in Hawaiian. The That's what I wanted to talk about is the written language. The Hawaiians didn't have a written language before 1830. The missionaries gave them a written language, and they became the most literate people in the world because of that at that time. Literate and in command of an international presence to a point where they even had electricity in Iolani Palace before the White House had power or electricity. Um, so that's not true. There's issues behind why they say that. They say that Hawaiian wasn't allowed in public school. Well, public schools didn't exist before 1830 either. I mean, if Hawaiians wanted to live the way they've always lived, they could let the keiki go and learn from the kapuna, like they did before the Europeans arrived, or learn from their parents in the fields or whatever. I mean, the keiki learned from their ohana, not from a public school system. So if the Hawaiians wanted to continue in that, they didn't have to send their kids to public school. But there's a reason why they didn't allow Hawaiian in public school for reading, writing, and arithmetic is because to get teachers in, they had to unify around one language so that it was easier for everybody to communicate on one language instead of some of these teachers having multiple languages, creating a barrier to entry. They brought in English speaking teachers, and if Ohana wanted to send their keiki to an English public school, then they would have to learn in English. But they could go home and learn in Hawaiian. I mean, they could continue their education and their cultural learning at home, and that's evident by all of the um, uh, books, newspapers, even the street signs. So I'm just going to play this for you really fast. This is called Apologia Studios. They're from Kauai. They have a mission start in Hawaii, and they're talking to some of the sovereignty people down on the beach. This is one guy who's very reasonable and talks about a good part of Hawaiian history when the missionaries were present. Now, there was bad things. There was communicable diseases, deadly communicable diseases that Hawaiians weren't immune to back then. But of course, they didn't know a whole lot about bacteria at the time. Not even the English, the Americans. I mean, that was a very foreign thing. So nobody expected the diseases to take hold so greatly. It was terrible. No excuse for it, but it was kind of a foreign, unknown thing. There were other things. I mean, business, European business, Western business that was somewhat foreign to Hawaiians. There was a lot of, things like that in there. But Hawaiians had a command of their society. King Kamehameha and his descendants for 98 years had a strong command of their society. So they didn't get forced to not speak Hawaiian. They chose to go to English schools. Anyway, let me play this guy.
When the missionaries came in like 1820, a lot of people don't understand that we the Hawaiian Kingdom didn't have a written language till 1830, you know. And there are sovereignty movements that say that, oh, this is us, but the language is written by some white person from Boston, and they say, oh, that's us. Yeah, go talk to your therapist or something. But the thing is that what happened with the missionaries, it brought the literacy in Hawaiian Islands to 90 something percent. Everybody could read. They could read both languages.
Yes.
They were very literate. So that was a good thing. What they did at
All right, so I mean, there's that confession of part of the progress of leaving a society that didn't have a written language, that didn't have a way of recording history, that didn't have a way of communicating old knowledge to new generations as easily through written language. They would use chants and oral history and oral traditions to communicate these ancient lessons and genealogy and whatnot. But with the written language, it gave them a strong command of, passing knowledge down, communicating, things that are important to a modern society. And it made them very powerful to have a written language. And then people will talk about the kapu system. The kapu system, I mean, just so we know, the kapu system was terrible. That's why they got rid of it. The Europeans didn't force them to do anything. They got rid of the kapu system before the missionaries ever arrived. In 1819, the Ali'i got rid of the kapu system. I'm just going to demonstrate a little bit of it here, but I wanted to talk about some of the restrictions of the kapu. So if you were female, you had very few food options. You couldn't eat bananas. You couldn't eat pork. You couldn't eat, a lot of things that males were able to eat and that ali'i specifically were able to eat. Women were at the very bottom of the totem pole, so they were, and they couldn't dine with their husbands. I mean, there were so many restrictions. And then, the lower caste, of the Hawaiian caste system, like even the nobles, they couldn't look at a king in the eye. They couldn't be taller than a king. They couldn't let a king's shadow fall upon them. I mean, there was some pretty strict consequences, like death. You could get killed for such things. Seeing the cut hair of a ali'i or the nail clippings of an ali'i. I mean, there were some really strange laws too, but that could also earn you death. So this is the end of the kapu, and like I say, it came before any missionaries showed up. This was the aristocracy. This was King Kamehameha's descendants and wives.
Aloha, this is Leon Siu for Christian Heritage Week. A popular misconception is that the American missionaries overthrew the Hawaiian religious system. In fact, the kapu system was overthrown 6 months before the missionaries arrived. On October 3, 1819, Kamehameha II and the wives of Kamehameha the Great sat and ate together at a royal banquet. By doing so, they deliberately broke one of the paramount rules of the kapu system. This meant that the king no longer regarded the old religious system as valid. Furthermore, in support of the king's action, Hewa, the high priest, immediately burned the nearby temple, or heiau. The king and the kahuna then ordered all the temples in Hawaii be desecrated and the images of the gods burned. Through a supernatural act of God, in one fell swoop, the religious political system was cast down by those rulers who benefited the most from that system.
And, to go into the history a little bit more on that, there was a lot of, hard feelings and battles even about the kapu system. So this is from Kamehameha Schools. Is this not the one? Sorry. I had this one from Kamehameha Schools that talked about the end of the kapu and the battle of like 300 Hawaiians against the ali'i, that they tried to bring the kapu back. They tried to resist the change of the kapu ending. Yeah, this is Kamehameha Publishing from 7 years ago. And these two talk about this. And I just wanted to introduce you to this because, as far as I'm concerned, this is very important. I hear a lot of people saying that Western civilization took Hawaiian culture away from them. I've heard the term cultural genocide used. But the Ali'i, when they were in full command of the island back in 1819, ended the kapu. It wasn't the Europeans. It certainly wasn't the missionaries. They weren't even here yet. So I should probably go into a lot of this. This isn't a very long video, so here, just play.
Auntie Gal, what is kapu?
Kapu are a set of rules, laws that tell us how we should behave so that we can keep in place all those things that we hold dear, like our relationship to the Aina, to this land, how we behave and take care of that, relationship with our gods, how we honor them, and even our relationship with people that we most respect, like our ali'i.
And why is this place so special and sacred? Because when I look around, look over here, boys and girls, when I look around, I see a lava field and a lot of rocks, but I know there's more of a story there. So what is that story?
When Kamehameha the Great died, there were two sets of chiefs, one that was led by Kekuo Kaleni, and they believed that these kapu, these rules that had been in place for generations and generations, over 1,000 years, they should remain in place.
Wow.
And then there were these other chiefs led by Liho Liho who felt that, no, things were changing. Lots of Westerners had already arrived and that things were changing and they needed to establish a new set of rules. And so they battled on this very spot to determine whether or not the kapu would stay in place.
Wow, Gal, this place is pretty amazing. But in the end, what happened?
Kekuo Kalani and those on his side lost the battle that day. And 300 people who fought for what they believe in are now buried here in the platforms that we see.
What about the couple? Did it survive?
The whole system of kapu, as we know of them, didn't. But lots of the aspects of kapu are very much a part of how we take care of.
All right, so anyway, they're talking about how the kapu ended, how there was a battle, how the kapu did not prevail in that battle, and that 300 people lost their lives at the hands of the ali'i, not of Europeans, but of the Hawaiian aristocracy, to get rid of the kapu, to completely demolish it, and desecrate all the temples, desecrate all the idols, destroy them, burn them. Anyway, so that's that. There's no cultural genocide unless you want to blame the ali'i of 1819. It's wrong to point your fingers at Caucasians or Europeans or whatever, or Haoles in general, because that was a decision by the ali'i when they were in full control of the island. They were absolutely at the command of the island, and it was not at all Caucasians that made the kapu end. It was the fact that Caucasians had shown that there was a better system out there, which I recently put a video on my channel about the American system of government, which is not just American. I mean, it's a republic is worldwide. You can see that in Japan. You can in many parts of Asia. You can see that in Africa, in Europe, in all these different places. Even in the Saudi or the Arabian areas, like Saudi Arabian, areas of northern Africa and things like that. So it's not just American, but I put that video on there to demonstrate the difference between a dictatorship, which is basically what a monarchy is, compared to a democracy, which is not a republic, and then what the difference between a republic and a democracy is, and what anarchy is. So this video that I recently put up shows all these differences and what their virtues are. And the best thing is that everybody gets equal rights established by a constitutional law, and that there's no caste system, that people based on their DNA or their family lineage aren't put in a lower class or a higher class. Like in America, in the United States, for example, 9 out of 10 millionaires are self-made. They made it on their own. They didn't get it inherited by some family member. They weren't eli'i, and their grandmother wasn't the queen or whatever. I mean, they earned it, and they became millionaires, and they rose up, on their own merit. Pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. That's the best part about a constitutional republic, is that people are guaranteed rights. And for example, in the American system, we have the 14th Amendment, which guarantees equal rights to all, equal treatment under the law. So that's why they relinquished the kapu and started moving towards more of a constitutional monarchy. When the constitutional monarchy went back to a dictatorial monarchy through Queen Liliuokalani, when she tried to force through a new constitution and she dismissed her entire cabinet, when she started forcing, the old system back in, the dictatorial monarchy instead of a constitutional monarchy, where she was thwarting all of the constitutional systems and legislature and everything that was in place, that's when she basically was impeached. She was committing treason and she was basically impeached with the overthrow. I mean, that's the closest language you could use to what we know at this time as being impeached. I mean, that's what the process was. Native Hawaiians, native-born Hawaiians, kingdom subjects, overthrew their monarch. And anyway, so that's this topic of the European arrival in Hawaii. Certainly there's a lot more to it than that. The Kingdom of Hawaii lasted from 1795 to 1893, roughly 98 years, which, in terms of nations or republics is, a tiny amount of time. So I know that a lot of people lament it and that they don't want necessarily a republic. Maybe they want a monarchy, but between having guaranteed constitutional rights where there's not a dictator or a monarch that can thwart those rights, compared to a constitutional republic where you're guaranteed rights, I can see why they chose a constitutional republic in Hawaii. And overwhelmingly, I mean, there was some dissent, but less than 15% of the population signed petitions against the annexation of Hawaii. And then when Hawaii became a state, it was like 96% of people voted in favor of becoming a state. So it is interesting. The European arrival is one of the most significant times in Hawaii. The last video I did, I talked about the Tahitian takeover, when the Tahitians took over the Mu people by brutal force, forcing them into the lower caste system and making them slaves in many cases, and human sacrifices too. So, I mean, there's been multiple transfers of power in Hawaii, but I think one of the most beneficial times, when, Hawaiians became educated and one of the most literate people and in commanding a nationwide presence is when the Haoles, or the Caucasians, arrived. When King Kamehameha met with these Caucasians, he made 2 of them ali'i, giving them land, titles, and callings. Both of the 2, Isaac Davis and John Young, became governors of the islands after the unification of the islands. John Young was governor of Hawaii most of the time, but he also governed Oahu, and Isaac Davis traded back and forth too. He governed Oahu and then sometimes Hawaii in King Kamehameha's stead when he was out politicking or traveling or whatever he was doing. So the Hawaiians embraced and welcomed and even made Haoles ali'i and gave them titles and a position in the aristocracy. And there was a reason for that. Maybe it was a divine reason, maybe it was a technological reason, but whatever it was definitely in many ways beneficial. In some ways it was negative because disease that nobody really knew much about came into the islands and killed a bunch of people, but that was not intentional, clearly, and it was terrible and it was sad. But that happened all over the world, and unfortunately these sailors were just nasty people. They were just gross, and they brought in disease, and it was terrible. There was a lot of promiscuity. And then, a lot of people talk about like cultural genocide, how the Hawaiian people were forced to like wear tops, and be less nude, and maybe not do so much erotic dancing, which, through hula, I guess, is what they're talking about. But that wasn't forced by the Europeans. You got to understand, the same people that ended the kapu also came into Christianity on their own volition. They were in total control. They could have kept their old traditions. They adopted Christianity, and then they put those values upon their people because they were dictators. And that's what a monarchy is a dictatorship. And so, yeah, maybe they did put some force on them to change their traditions or their cultural values, but it wasn't Caucasians that forced them to do that. That was the Ili'i that did that. They were in total control. These people that say that the Ili'i didn't have control, don't make them be so weak. That makes let them appear small-minded when they say they didn't have control in 1819. Of all times, of 1819, they didn't have control. When the kapu was ended, they had total control. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they commanded a strong presence among the Caucasians that were there. So anyway, you want to compare the system that changed in Hawaii to like the 1887 Constitution. That's comparable to like the 1208 Magna Carta, where people rose up, they said, hey, we're tired of the tyranny, you better change this Constitution, and they did. The monarchy did. With King John and the Magna Carta in 1208, very similar to what happened in 1887 in Hawaii. People got sick of the tyranny, of the dictatorship, the lack of representation, whatever else, and they forced a change. It happens. It's happened all over the world, and every single nation in the world transfers of power like this have happened. So I just get a little bit on edge when people talk about cultural genocide and all this other stuff. It just isn't true. We have to look at both sides of this. We can't just see the side that benefits us the most. I mean, I can definitely admit there were negative parts of the Europeans coming, but there were also negative parts of the Tahitians coming. The Tahitians weren't the first ones here. Yet most pure-blooded Kanaka, or mostly pure-blood Kanaka, are a vast majority of them. The highest content of their DNA is Tahitian DNA. The DNA tests and studies have been done, so we know that's true. Most of these people were Tahitians. At least their family was. Their ancestors were the Tahitians that conquered and really put the Mu people in a disposition. That was more cultural genocide than what happened when the Westerners came in, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, I hope this is my third try tonight. I started late. I wasn't able to take calls. I mean, I could take calls right now, but I don't know. I think that because I've already broadcast, I don't have the listeners that I started with. Let me just put this up. For right now, I'll give it, 5 minutes or so till 6:47. Right now it's 6:42 on January 14th, 2020. I'll give it till 6:47. If anybody wants to call in, the number is 808-215-7809. That should be on the bottom of the screen there right now. And I'm happy to take people's calls. There's one thing though that I wanted to, emphasize here. Somebody last night told me they doxed me first. They started telling people what my address was. They started telling me they knew what car I drove and what stickers I have in my window. Like it looked kind of threatening to me. And based on past conversations, in fact, I've got a video about it that I might release eventually, but I made a video of all the threats and then what was going on last night with this person saying that I had censored him. So I just wanted to put that to rest because it's just not true. That's not what I'm about. Let me just say, I like people to have their opinion. And I've always, since I started broadcasting 20 years ago, I've always encouraged other people to get on the radio, start a podcast, start, making YouTube videos so that they aren't getting censored, because I know censorship happens. But if somebody's being censored, there's a way around that. Yeah, right here. See, I made this video last night about the person doxing me and threatening me. And I've got all the examples and references in there. I may release it someday. Jeez. Surprised. It's unlisted and it's already got 181 views. And a comment. I don't even know what that's about. I didn't see a notification come in. Oh, I see. It's the proof that I offered. I made that comment. But, I don't want people to feel as if though they're censored. Like, this guy has been threatening me for 5 months, and I probably did mute him for a little while just so that I could collect all the evidence and he couldn't delete all the comments that he made. And so I think what happened is I blocked him so that he couldn't come to my channel and delete all of the threats that he'd made before I had collected the evidence. But I've unblocked him now. He's more than welcome to make an ass out of himself and threaten me and do whatever else he wants. I guess if that's what he has to do to get his point across. See, good points don't take force, in my opinion. Opinions that require force are terrible. Ideas or opinions or plans that require force are terrible ideas. I mean, they have no merit if they can't win on the facts alone. And so when people are threatening or intimidating or doxing you or whatever they have to do to get their point across, I just find that as a weakness, not a strength. But I guess if he wants to come and do that, I have unblocked him. He's more than welcome to do that. 6:45. I'm putting this on for 2 more minutes. If anybody wants to call up, I can put you on the phone here. I believe I've got the system set up correctly. Let me just change the camera mode here so I can show you this. So what I've done is I've got my phone hooked up to my soundboard, and I've got this number routing to my cell phone, this 808-215-7809. And it will route to my phone, and then I can take the call and put it through the soundboard so that it shows up on the live stream and also on the video that I'll upload later. So if you want to call, you want to have your say, have your say. But if you just want to make a video of your own so that you're not getting censored, because I know that people are talking this story, that they've been censored or whatever, just make your own video. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't take a genius to stream on YouTube. YouTube makes it really easy. So, I mean, if you put it on your own channel, the only person that's going to censor you is either you or Google, or YouTube, I guess. You or YouTube, since Google owns YouTube, it'd be either you or Google who censors you. But nobody can, not me or any other podcaster or vlogger or whatever, or YouTube member could censor you on your own channel. So I gave this video in one of my recent blog posts called our bi-weekly call-in event update. And I just let people know, hey, there's a way to do it yourself. If you have something to say to me and you feel like I've censored you or that your content is in jeopardy for me deleting your comment, all you have to do is make your own video, upload it to your own channel, send me a link. I'll reply. I'll take your video and make a point on each of your points. I'll respond, and we can have a conversation like that. In March, apparently, I can use Google Hangouts, so I can invite people to join me live. So we can have like a actual roundtable. But when I tried to do this, when I got signed up with G Suite, I got this error here, and it says access to YouTube during your G Suite trial. This article is for YouTube settings in G Suite. If you recently signed up for G Suite, your users might see a message, this account is not yet eligible to use YouTube. Even if YouTube is turned on in your Google admin settings. You and your users can use all features of YouTube when you've owned your G Suite account for the last 30 days and your G Suite account has been billed at least $30 or the equivalent in your currency. This amount doesn't include the cost to purchase your domain. And all of this. Anyway, so eventually, like in March, mid-March or something, I'll be able to have people join me in a live roundtable. But until then, I'm just going to continue this Hawaii Divided series, and we'll just talk about this, each of these different subjects. And you can see it's on Facebook. It's called Hawaii History Discussion, hosted by Disruptarian. My page Disruptarian. There should be a live stream going on there right now. So we'll live stream it on YouTube, but we'll also live stream it on Facebook. So that's where we're at today. Anyway, it is now 6:49. Nobody has called. I didn't expect anybody to. It's quite late, and I started quite late. And this is my third try. So hopefully I got the audio correct, I got the video correct, and hopefully, if we lucked out, it's streamed correctly. I'm not guaranteeing that, but if it didn't, I've got it recorded. No, I didn't get it recorded. It's not recording. So hopefully it live streamed. Anyway, peace out. Mahalo. Have a good one. Enjoy your new year.